Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. And today I'm joined by Victor Avila, Agent Under Fire. So we're going to talk about his book and we're going to talk about his experiences on the border. And he's got some amazing things to share with you guys. Hello, everyone. So looking forward to having him talk. Victor, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your book and your background and the border situation. Some of the stuff that we were discussing is like, wow, pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. My book is a focus of the number one reason why I wrote the book is back in 2011 when I was assigned to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. Special Agent Jaime Zapata and I, he was assigned there temporarily. We were sent on an assignment, kind of a botched assignment, and I explained that in the book, on a highway, a corridor where the Zetas cartel controlled, and we were unfortunately ambushed by the cartel members, and I was shot 3 times and miraculously survived by the grace of God. And Special Agent Jaime Zapata tragically lost his life in the line of duty. And so I needed to, as a survivor and part of that identity, uh, unfortunately there was not a lot of widespread media coverage. There was some, but
Mhm.
not to the extent that I thought it merited to have America know the sacrifices that a lot of our U.S. personnel assigned around the world do and sacrifice for our country and the security of our country. And so that's the main, that's the focus on the book. I share a little bit of my background. I'm originally from El Paso, Texas, a border town, born and raised there. Worked most of my law enforcement career. So I share stories, obviously law enforcement stories. We all in the law enforcement world have them. So I put a few on there. I'm a subject matter expert in human trafficking, and
Mm.
so I share uh, 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 some powerful stories about that and actual cases. And then I move into the my assignment that led into Mexico, the shooting, and then the second part of my book is really what I call because the title of the book is Agent Under Fire: A Murder and a Manifesto. The manifesto part of it is really solutions to the ongoing issues with our border security. And really, the way I see it is the protection of our sovereignty,
Nice.
and the conditions that Mexico is in and has been for a long time, and the organized crime with the cartels is a direct impact and what I feel is an imminent threat to our country, and it's been for a while. And you won't see it on the mainstream media, especially in the last year or so, because of especially the election and all that has taken the the uh, the the timeline and the stories, and rightly so probably, but ignoring the
Even,
problem at our
even,
border.
even with all the wall that's been built, you still think it's a big problem, huh?
Yeah, so the border is better secure now
Good.
because of the wall that was built and the other measures that the Trump administration has set in place. And we'll talk about how many of those are probably going to go away in 6 days.
Mhm.
And so the those things that have been done are good, and we need to continue to do more of those. However, I wish I could sit here and tell you that our border is secure, but it really is still not. We still have a long way to go. We
Wow.
are seeing record numbers of seizures of methamphetamine, heroin,
Mm.
and fentanyl that's coming from Mexico, and it's coming into our communities. We know we have an epidemic in our country with overdoses, and it's all related back to the cartels, who, by the way, by Mexico's own statistic, they control and have influence over 80% of that country.
Mm.
The Mexican government has officially said that. And so imagine if organized crime had 80% control of the United States. What would
Mm.
we do as a community and as in the law enforcement world to tackle that? And so that's how serious it is, because they're our next door neighbor. Mexico is right there,
Yeah,
and we have a lot of trade obviously with them, but the illicit activity that's coming from that border into our country is something that the focus is way overdue.
definitely. So you mentioned fentanyl. Uh, Fentanyl being manufactured in China, and then uh, leaked over the border, and like you're saying, like major numbers, it's like an attack on us. They're doing it deliberately to, bring down America. It's insane, the way they're doing it.
That's absolutely right, and you're absolutely right with the relationship with China. Guess the Mexicans deal with is China. They're getting the precursors, the chemicals from them. That's not a good relationship that we want them to have with, right? Because of the challenges that we face with China as well.
Sure.
But they're there. The presence is there in Mexico, and so that's another challenge. There's ties from the cartels to terrorist groups like Hezbollah and
Mhm.
others to finance their organization. And so, speaking of that, I've been talking a lot over the last couple of years about supporting the idea of categorizing and designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, as FTOs, which I think that the big cartels, the big organizations, it would make a big impact if they were, because now the U.S. would really have. Imagine if they're designated just as ISIS or the Taliban.
Mhm.
Now we're no longer going to do these 2-year long-term investigations that DEA, Homeland Security investigations does, FBI. Those type of methods no longer work anymore. We
Yeah.
need to attack these guys and we need to take them down. And the FTO designation would bring a lot of resources
Mm.
to be able to do that. And guess what? And not only the cartels in Mexico, because the cartels are here in our United States,
Mhm.
all over our country, and 40 countries abroad.
Mm.
And so they are dealing with the gang members in Chicago, St. Louis, and all these communities in California, and they're directly linked. So if they're designated as an FTO, now we could go after these, or excuse me, now we could go after these gangs in California and Chicago and these places, and really, because of their association, just like if you would start associating with ISIS and start emailing them right now,
Mm.
the FBI is going to come knocking on your door. So
Yeah.
guess what? Let's start taking everybody that's going to be dealing with the cartels because of the selling of the product, the human trafficking that these cartels have expanded. They're not drug trafficking organizations anymore. They're into the human smuggling, human trafficking. They've gotten into the avocado trade, the
Wow.
gasoline and petroleum
Jeez.
exchange in Mexico. And
Mm.
so these organizations are serious. They're highly sophisticated and organized,
Mhm.
highly weaponized. There's videos, a lot of them you can find online. I get some access to some through my contacts, but they're
Mhm.
having firefights in the middle of the day in streets,
Yeah. Wow.
chases. You wouldn't recognize it as Mexico. You would think this is the Middle East.
Yeah.
And so I think now that's our Middle East right now, our neighbor right there. We need to deal with it quick.
That's amazing insight. I feel like I'm pretty savvy on what's going on in the world. I had no idea some of the stuff you're sharing, how bad it was. So for my background, Navy SEAL for 24 years and 11 years in the CIA, all of that was finding and eliminating terrorists overseas, but we have them right here at our border. So, like you kind of mentioned to me earlier before we started the show, that there needs to be a huge surge on our border, and I agree with you. Just a little conversation we're having right now. Wow.
I put one of those solutions in my book that I think and I mentioned the 20,000 troops that are in DC right now because of the inauguration and all that. I wish I would see those 20,000 troops down at their border, because that's where the imminent danger and the imminent threat is at.
Absolutely.
And I line out in my book a surge of the 20,000 men and women of CBP that includes Border Patrol and customs side of it as well. Uh, Bring them all in from the interiors, leave skeleton crews, bring them all to the southern border. Let's bring some National Guard if we have to, bring all of ICE, Homeland Security investigations. Let's bring them for a period of 12, 18 months, up to 2 years if we have to, and seal that border. because a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing with you, and the stuff that we see in the crime increases around our country are directly related to the cartels. Well, we could start, we could go to Chicago, and nobody's ever done it, anything in Chicago and in all these places. If you want to, we could police that, but it's going to continue until we get to the source, which is
Right.
down at the border. And
Yeah.
I think let's seal it. Let's seal it. Let's take out these cartels, these organizations, and then that'll help us then, focus on our country to eliminate the criminal element that is dealing with them, and of course the overdoses and that kind of treatment as well.
That's brilliant. If they were to designate them, like you said, a terrorist organization, then the military can and would get involved, and that would be like a special forces like me, having been a special force. That would be like my dream come true, to go after terrorist organizations that are definitely a major threat to the United States. Not the guys that are like thousands and thousands of miles away, but people that are like a few hundred miles away. It maybe
That's right.
not even that, across the border.
And in your communities, they are in your communities. They live there. A lot of them are illegal as well, and so the illegal immigration aspect comes into it as well. But I think the surge would do something. The designation, like you said, it will bring DoD resources. But another thing that it does, it automatically gives the U.S. government the authority to go seize all of their assets and
Yeah.
all of their illicit funds from whatever bank they have it all over the world.
There you go.
That's the key, because I get some people say, "Hey, Victor, well, they don't have the same ideology like ISIS and da da da." To me, I don't care about what the ideology is. These guys have killed 36,000 people in Mexico in 2020. They broke the record
Wow.
from 2019. 36,000 murders, homicides in Mexico, a country of 110 million. If you compare and do the math to our country, I don't even know what that number would be in homicides here. That would be chaotic if you
Yeah.
had those type of homicides in our country. And so I think the designation would do that, would freeze their funds, because their ideology is money and power, right? We know the cartels, that's what they want. Well, let's take that away from them. We could tackle this in separate ways. And I understand it's a very cumbersome task. You have to have an enormous amount of coordination between military, federal agencies, police agencies, state, local, sheriffs, everyone would have to be on a board. It's cumbersome, but I think it could be done. And
Oh yeah.
we could definitely have an impact. And it's all for the safety and security of our U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
That's all. I think everybody could agree. Doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. It's to protect our children and our families.
Absolutely. Victor, I've worked with law enforcement, as a SEAL and CIA and so forth. And a professional works, it's like seamless. It doesn't matter. I can work with a professional in another organization like it's nothing, as long as they're a professional.
Right.
It's really easy. So I think your ideas are like amazing. Your insight is like unbelievable. You're a great spokesperson. So I love it. So what developed you to that point? Let's go back in time and bring us up to that one tragic moment. Your training and all that kind of stuff.
So I graduated with a criminal justice degree, Bachelor of Science, out of the University of Texas El Paso. And what do you do with this criminal justice degree? In El Paso, there's a huge presence of federal law enforcement. Everybody wants to go federal. My career started as a state parole officer for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and really that really opened up my eyes to the criminal world and the criminal element, because I dealt with the supervision of I actually was assigned to supervise and surveil the most violent gang members that were, people first realize that everybody goes to prison doesn't stay in prison. Almost all of them will get released at one point or another. And so these people, because of different laws, would have a mandatory release, and they'd be on a monitor, and I would surveillance them and follow them. and really have these intimate conversations with them, hardcore gang members, murderers, sex offenders. And so that really opened that world to me, kind of criminal underworld.
Yeah.
And I realized I'm an ambitious guy. I realized that the job that I was doing at the state level exists at the federal level as a U.S. federal probation officer. And
Hmm.
so I looked into that. I applied. That's the first time I moved me out of El Paso. I was picked up in San Antonio, and so now I work for the U.S. courts. And so not only was now supervising federal offenders, I was now dealing with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the defense attorneys. The other side is completing pre-sentence investigations reports, the federal sentencing guidelines for these offenders, and writing these extensive reports for the courts. And I really learned that second part of our justice system and our judicial system. And I was doing that several years into it. I had moved back to El Paso, and part of that job as a federal probation officer to talk to a lot of and interview a lot of the special agents from U.S. Customs. Back then, it was INS, Secret Service, DEA, FBI, and I love talking to these guys and the men and women of these agencies. And I got to the point where I said, I don't want to read about it. I don't want to talk to them about it. I want to do what they do. And
Nice.
so I applied as a special agent for U.S. Customs Service. This was right when the merger happened and the Department of Homeland Security was created. And they
Wow.
took the Immigration and Naturalization Service, remember them, INS,
Yep.
and the U.S. Customs Service investigators, special agents, and merged them into what you know as ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And so now under ICE, there's two divisions. The ICE there's the one you hear about a lot in the news, the deportations, the camps, and the administrative part of removing people from the country, illegal aliens. And the other part is the special agents like me, the criminal investigators. And so now they have given several years ago that part of it our Homeland Security Investigations Special Agent. And so a lot of people forget, they hear ICE and think immigration only,
Hmm.
but HSI does, narcotics trafficking investigations, human trafficking, human
Hmm.
smuggling, money laundering investigations, arms trafficking investigations, intellectual property rights, which right now, with the vaccines coming into our country, any counterfeit pharmaceuticals, vaccines, HSI investigates that. Anything that touches our border or
Hmm.
has a nexus to our border, HSI has the jurisdiction to investigate that.
Yeah, I like how you're like me. I wanted to go high speed. I was a Navy SEAL, and I was like, what's the top? And it's like SEAL Team 6. So I eventually went into SEAL Team 6 and was in a operator in a squadron. But what I got from that, having been in anti-terrorism teams and studying terrorism for all those years, and then eventually going into the CIA and working to find terrorists, it definitely improved my abilities to find them and help track them down and eliminate them. So that's amazing. Your progression and your drive and your dedication.
Thank you. Every job that I had, and at one point when I was going to college, I worked for the post office for a while. It's incredible that every job that you have, how it helped me as an investigator. The U.S. probation side of it was incredible for me as an investigator because I knew the guidelines, and I knew some of the questions that when I interrogated some of these individuals, I knew certain questions to ask that pertain to the guidelines, because I knew that if I first of all I had to ask that question, and
Mhm.
that answer that they give me would possibly put this individual either in jail more or reduce his sentence, either way, right?
Yeah.
But you have to ask the question, and not knowing to ask the question is a big deal. And that gave me a great advantage growing up on the border, and being fortunate to be stationed back in El Paso when I got out of the academy was a tremendous asset to me. I worked on both sides. I lived on both sides of the border. I lived in El Paso my whole time, but visited Juarez all the time. I knew some of the streets these guys did deals on, and I would sometimes tell them, "Hey, yeah, oh, you were next to that Blockbuster," and they'd be like, "How the heck does this guy know?" And so it was a great advantage to with sources and all that. It was really good. That's kind of the progression that my career led me to my assignment in Mexico. It
Hmm.
first was to the U.S. consulate in Juarez, right on the other side of El Paso, Texas, in 2008, and that's when Juarez was the most dangerous city in the world. There were about 350 homicides a month in that year, a
Yeah,
month.
I remember the era actually, because I was a security professional in the CIA. They were actually asking for some of us to go into Mexico. We're like, into Mexico? You're kidding me. But listening to you, I'm like, it's just very obvious there were some serious problems going on down there.
Absolutely, and it was incredible. I mean, that opened the whole, career for me. Really,
Mhm.
I went first as a temporary agent. Because of that temporary assignment, I got to go to and travel to Mexico City, where I actually had never been to. I had been to other parts of Mexico, but never to Mexico City. Went
Mhm.
to the U.S. Embassy on an arms trafficking case.
Yep.
The stars align for you sometimes in your career, and at that point, they needed a new agent. I applied, I got it, and I moved my family. My family and I went, and
Wow.
Mexico City is a really nice, metro.
Yeah.
Think of it as a New York. It's a
Okay.
beautiful city, big, and it's nice. They put you up in, now you become a U.S. diplomat.
Yep.
You're an accredited diplomat. You're representing the country, but
Excellent.
still have the mission as a special agent to enhance the mission of the United States. And Mexico needed a lot of help, a lot of training with investigations, and of course the corruption is we can't ignore that, and dealing with that. But that's the most I ever worked ever in my life.
Hmm.
I was hardly home. I was sometimes home 2, 3 days out of the month,
Hmm.
and a lot of traveling, and really did some good work, taking down human trafficking cells in Mexico that would traffic women and children to Atlanta, New York, Miami, Houston, and
Bro.
rescued a lot of women and kids. That was very rewarding. They're hard investigations to conduct and
Yep.
horrific with because they treat the victims as a table, as a product,
Mhm.
and it's hard stuff to see. But I had success in Mexico, and unfortunately, and like I mentioned, in February 2015 of 2011, which we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary, we uh, we got put in the situation where we found ourselves, Jaime Zapata and I, fighting for our lives, uh, it turned my world upside down.
Mhm.
Not just with me and my family, the Zapata family, of course, they lost their son, and it was something that was you never think it's going to happen to you. In this case, it's a little different than like a police shooting because it's a cartel. It was an ambush. There was
Mhm.
8 shooters, AK-47s, and so I struggled with coming out of that. My agency, I talk a little bit about the book. They were not, they weren't the best at treating me and my family, which is very unfortunate. I still support the men and women of ICE and the DHS, but in my case, that I definitely fell through the cracks. They didn't know what to do. That had never happened before,
Yeah.
and so
You're at the top of your game. You feel indestructible. I know I've been there, and here you are in basically a hit squad is put on you guys.
yeah.
So what do you think? What was it you guys were doing that made them want to take you guys down? Obviously, you're impacting them, and they wanted you gone.
Yeah, their story, the cartels, where they wanted to carjack us and steal our armored vehicle. They destroyed that armored vehicle, and people can go online, and there's some pictures in the book that I put in there of how they destroyed that vehicle.
Mm.
But I believe it's not. They didn't want the vehicle, and they didn't want to carjack because they knew we were Americans. They testified to it that they knew that we were American. They heard me when I yelled that we were Americans. The trip was about picking up from Mexico City. We traveled towards Monterey to pick up some surveillance and tracking device type of equipment, and that's as far as I can go with that.
Mm-hmm.
But and so it was a lot of equipment. It took up the whole back of the Suburban to fill up all the boxes,
Wow.
and that's what we were bringing back to Mexico City.
Mm-hmm.
But in this assignment, there was no backup. There was usually when we do that kind of travel, and you know this very well, there's a convoy.
Oh yeah.
2 or 3 armored vehicles, sometimes the federal police to protect us, or even the Mexican military to travel with us. I mean, I
Yeah.
had done that many, many times. We weren't afforded those protections because they send us for me on a 1 day notice, like you got to go tomorrow morning, and I was never briefed on what was going on. I was brought in at the very end, and that's a big no-no in law enforcement. You have to be briefed.
Oh yeah.
If you're not briefed, you don't get to play. If you're not present, right? Well, they had been working on this for months, and
Mhm.
I wasn't part of the email string. I wasn't part of any of that. It wasn't even my case that the equipment was going to be used for. But
Wow.
that's, I got caught in that. I challenged the assignment as much as I could, but eventually was ordered to go do it.
So, what I I kind of get a feel of what's going on here and where this might have come from. So, it's unfortunate because I've been in kind of situations like that where they want you to do some things that are kind of sketchy because they want to keep it low key. They're not going to bring a lot of people on board where they need to have a lot of people on board. So, I'm not saying you guys were set up, but um, what do you feel happened? On a deeper level.
Definitely. I'm the first one to say our supervisors didn't want us killed. That's
Yeah.
clear. I'll make that clear. But they definitely ignored a lot of the intelligence that we had. I mean, right then and there, when I got the assignment, I called the US, the ICE special agent in Monterey. I say, "Hey, what the heck is going on?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Man, there's firefights between the Zetas cartel and the military and the police." And I'm like, what are we doing picking up this on the highway? Why don't you fly it in, diplomatic pouch it, and all these other weird? And they said, oh yeah, we already talked about all that, and they've shut all that down. They wanted to do it by land, by us. And so, and on top of this, by the way, there was an alert issued about 3 weeks before to all U.S. personnel by the U.S. ambassador prohibiting anyone from driving on that highway, which is Highway 57, either for business reasons or personal reasons. And so my supervisors completely ignored that alert, and the alert was issued because of the intelligence that we all get. I mean, one of my the deputy attaché, after, because I challenged it with my supervisor, and I told him, you got to go talk to the deputy attaché. We got to bump it up one more level here. And his words, and I quote him, and I'll quote him until I can. He said he wasn't aware of any security issues in Mexico.
Mhm.
And when he said that, I'm like, I said, you got to be kidding. The whole country is a critical four, a category level issued by the State Department.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What the heck are you talking about? You're not aware of any critical, there's incompetence, there's other issues there, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, this happened, and um, I feel as a duty to share the story,
Yeah.
to make sure that Jaime's death was not in vain.
Good.
That his duty to our country is something that a lot of people continue to do as we speak all around the world.
So, now I wasn't directly involved in Benghazi in Libya, but I had two friends that died there, and I actually had worked with one of those guys like just 2 months prior,
Wow.
and so I knew a lot of people that were there. I was one of the first people that came in and recovered some of the stuff that was there. Um, so I got to see the body armor with the mortar, you know,
Mm,
shrapnel in it and the blood on it and stuff. So
wow.
it was frustrating, to know, kind of like what you're talking about, that things could have and should have been different. So you look back and you're like, what did you guys do there? It's like, it's crazy. So I know they call that you called it the Mexican Benghazi.
My good friend Daniel Horowitz is the one that called it the Mexican Benghazi, and I start thinking of it because obviously I'm very aware of Benghazi. I'm like, well, there's some similarities there of the ignoring of the intelligence, of the ignoring of people that know on the ground. Like in my case, I knew, listen, what are you doing? Yet you're overruled by other people not to do this or do that. And so, as a federal employee, sometimes you follow rules or orders, or you're insubordinate, and get sent home.
Yeah. Yeah. That's unfortunate. So, So where does it go from here? Where do you think the people should be focused on, going forward? Has there been things that have been done to, remedy that?
Yeah. There's obviously afterwards. For example, there was no training on how to drive an armored vehicle. I didn't get any training. Jaime Zapata, that was the first armored vehicle he ever drove,
Mm,
and so it was. That now there's armor training, shooting from an armored vehicle training, mandatory before you get to Mexico.
mhm,
There's other technical that things that happen in the suburban. For example, there was a GPS tracker that was installed. We tested it in Mexico. You hit a toggle switch, and there was an alarm that went out in DC
mm.
immediately, instantly, and we were on the phone, tested great. It had a green, yellow, and red light. Well, after a couple of months, it was red the whole time. The signal was never going out. I tell my supervisor, hey, this GPS thing is not working, man. And it was actually designed exactly for what we went through. So
Yeah.
at the time of the ambush, I did hit the toggle switch, but it sent the message to Washington D.C. 8 hours later.
See.
So it wasn't working. So equipment like that and those type of failures have been remedied, and unfortunately, it took the death of an agent to get them done. And there's additional training as well. But yeah, Mexico continues to be. It's worse now. When I was there, I always thought this is it. This is the bottom. Mexico can only go up from here,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, I was very very wrong.
Wow.
And it's worse and way worse now.
Oh my God. So we've kind of discussed a little bit what the impact of that is on the United States. I've talked to people, and I always thought that the drug issue was the biggest thing, but they're saying human trafficking is even bigger now. Is that your
Yeah, I mean that's my expertise, and human trafficking is now right up next to an illicit funds received by these criminal organizations, right next to drug trafficking. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. They're learning, and they've learned that one victim keeps on giving them money. If you get a kilo of cocaine and you sell it, you make your nice profit. Well, you have to go get another kilo of cocaine. Well, these guys get, 10, 15, 20, 30 victims and put them under the sex slave trade, and they make millions of money off of them until either they die, they're so sick they can't work. They have them seeing 30, 40 johns a day, and under very duress conditions, and it's a modern day slavery, but it's not shackles that people think, oh, these girls are tied up. No, they're not. They're coerced, they're broken,
yeah.
and a lot of times they hold their kids hostage in their home country. And I saw a lot of those in Mexico, threatening to send one of the kids' fingers or the ear if they didn't do this, plus the additional physical harm they would do with them, to them at these brothels. But it's a horrific crime, and yes, human trafficking right now in the United States, the Dallas Fort Worth area is a number one area hub for human trafficking, and now it's not just the victims that come from Mexico, Central America, and Europe, which they still are, but the big focus has shifted, and they're learning that, hey, I don't have to go get the victim; they're right here in the U.S.
Mhm.
So you're looking at runaways, vulnerable young girls that these guys are basically hunting for, and guess where? Online, and they look for them online, they get them, they hook them. There's just three elements to human trafficking: force, fraud, or coercion, and they use those methods. And
Mm.
before you know it, they got U.S. citizens trafficking working for them, and getting the money out of it.
Well, I know that Trump has really cracked down on that a lot, probably more than anyone else in a long time, if not ever. And I've had a lot of guests on that have talked about human trafficking, being part of human trafficking, child slavery when they were early in their lifetimes, satanic, all kind of like just out of this world type stuff.
Yes.
And a lot of those, that human trafficking is going to people in the high end of like political, social realms. Is that part of what you've been seeing too?
Yeah, these organizations are tied in at every level.
Mm.
from the lowest of the lowest to very, very high. And the money flows both ways in that type of industry.
Mm.
And because there's so much money available for these guys, and that's up for grabs. But yeah, a lot of people, some people still might think that they're like in denial that this doesn't really happen.
Yep.
And I'm here to tell you, I've seen it. You can't take those images out of my head ever.
Mm.
And the things that human beings are capable of doing to children and other females and males, by the way. And it's not just the sex slave trade; it's the forced labor as well. We got to remember that
Mm.
a lot of Chinese are brought over and put in sweatshops here in the U.S. and
Wow.
abroad in Europe. I worked in Spain and Portugal, and that was a big problem over there as well.
Mm. Incredible. So yeah, worldwide too. Yeah, you've been all over the world too, not just Mexico, but overseas and in
Yeah.
European countries too. So yeah, I saw this in the Middle East. I saw the drug trafficking. I saw human trafficking, slavery, uh, all the way down to children. Like you're saying, when you see some of this stuff and you know some of the people that are involved, it's kind of devastating at first on your consciousness, and then you kind of get a little bit like, hmm, this is something I'm going to work on,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I feel emboldened to do right now. It's a subject that I thought a lot of people would resist, like you're talking about, but I get the most coverage when I cover this stuff now. So people
Yeah.
are really open finally, I think, on a level that hasn't been seen before to we got to stop this. We want to know about it and know how to defeat it. And I mean, you have the answers. I mean,
A lot of things that we saw, obviously, it's tied into the trafficking is child pornography,
mm,
a lot of child sex tourism. A lot. These guys, the U.S. citizens, have these demented individuals started learning quickly that they didn't have to go to Cambodia across the world. They could just go to Mexico and do it there.
mm,
And so we had some big cases taking down U.S. citizens committing those type of crimes in Mexico.
excellent, excellent. So I mean, it's got to continue to we got to continue to, like, crank down on that and get it to the point where it's zero. It's a
Yeah.
long way off, but I think we're making inroads. So you're not very comfortable with the potential of a next administration pushing this. Why is that?
Let me tell you, it's so under a Biden presidency. Let's start with border security. He's going to try to undo every single policy that the Trump administration implemented. And I'm hearing a little bit of good news, and he's starting to walk some of those promises back already, because he's going to realize, either it's him or his people are going to realize, that you cannot do it overnight. You can't just undo it. For example, the construction of the wall, you just cannot. There's contracts, there's all these other issues. You just can't stop one day, everybody pick up and go. So he's going to allow him another 6 months or so to see and evaluate it. And that's going to happen with, for example, the asylum seekers, the caravanners that are coming. Just about 10 days ago, there was 400 Cubans coming over from Juarez into El Paso, Texas. They stormed the port of entry. 400 Cubans chanting Biden, Biden, Biden.
Hmm.
And CBP had to put up their gear, and they stopped them at the bridge of the port of entry coming over. This is the message that the Biden administration sends all over the world, not just Mexico, Central America, but guess what? The special interest countries, which we call the special interest aliens, that come to this country. They're not the economic migrants that want to come here for better their families and to work. And I'm talking about people from Somalia, Bangladesh, Yemen, Syria, that have possible terrorist ties. And that's the key here: is people don't they forget that it's not that I'm an anti-humanitarian. No, I
Mhm.
understand people in Central America, Mexico, they have a terrible conditions there. They just don't, by law, by the asylum law, do not qualify for asylum. They're not being persecuted by their government. They're not. They don't. The criteria for the asylum, by the way, hasn't changed in years. It's the interpretation by, like, for example, the Obama administration, and now the Biden administration, of how they interpret that law. And that's where it starts getting dangerous, because they're going to start opening the border and allowing these people to come in to seek asylum, and end what we call the catch and release, where people are caught, but they're released into our country. They're not released to their country. They're released to our country, waiting for their asylum case. Well, you're never going to see them again. 95% of them never show up again for the hearing. And
Wow.
so that's a big problem. The asylum cases, the remain in Mexico policy, it's part of that. Donald Trump implemented that, say you'll have to wait in Mexico and or in your home country to seek asylum.
Mhm.
And if they undo that, guess what? They're going to be waiting in our country.
Wow. Yeah, that's frustrating. Yeah. And why do you think that is? Like, I know certain parties claim that they have humanitarian, like you're talking about, ideals in mind. But from what I've been seeing, there's other ulterior motives. Or have you seen anything like that, or is it just really there's clueless?
Are you talking about the asylum seekers, or?
No, just opening the border in general.
Oh gosh. The old rhetoric that because I'm an advocate for strong border, I'm the racist, right? And I'm the bad guy because I want to the protection of our country, of our sovereignty. And yes, I do believe in protecting our U.S. citizens first, and our resident aliens first, and not. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Every other country in the world does that. They put their citizens first. Why can't we put ours first? And it's not immoral. It's not racist. It's first of all, it's the law. I didn't write the law. The law has been there forever. The difference is allowing our ICE officials, DEA, FBI, to enforce that law. And so I remember even under the Obama administration, when I worked, there was a group called in HSI that just focused on employers, right, hiring illegal aliens. Those groups were almost completely disbanded because President Obama back then said no one's going to go check on anyone. So the policy from the administration is a huge impact on the field of what the agent can and cannot arrest. I was going to go arrest an illegal alien drug trafficker at the university because I found him at the university, and they told me to stand down. You are not to touch. You cannot arrest anybody at a school, a church, or a courthouse. And I think people have heard that in the news lately. But that started affecting us years ago, many years ago. Why? The guy's a criminal, wanted on drug charges, and on top of that, he's here illegally. I'll get him where I get him, right? It's why? Because I want to protect the community. And so that goes into play with the sanctuary city policies that we've seen around our country, sanctuary states like California, where it seems like the illegal alien has more rights than the U.S. citizen. They'll commit a crime. They commit a crime, and they're in the criminal justice system at the jail. All they have to do is notify ICE when they find out that he's illegal, so ICE can go pick him up. But they purposely do not release the individual. Guess what? He goes back into the community, his own community, to terrorize them and other U.S. citizens. So the Democrats, or the left, or the liberals, whatever you want to call them, they say that they're protecting the immigrant community, when in fact they're putting them more in danger. And I could give you example after example. MS-13 in the northeast part of our country. These guys will butcher. They use machetes to chop off their victims, the women. They rape them. When they get released in New York, because not only they're illegal and it's a sanctuary city, but they also have bail reform, but they're not even going to get bail. They just get released on their own recognizance. And there's this revolving door. They get released right back to the immigrant community that they terrorize.
Oh my God.
And that's the part that people don't understand. Like, we're not protecting anyone. We're actually putting them in more danger. We need to capture these individuals, hold them to serve their sentences in the U.S. and then deport them to their home country.
Yeah. Wow. It's like, it's amazing, the level of, naivete that a lot of people have towards these, humanitarian ideas that you're saying, it's actually a massive negative. So
No,
there's,
I'll say this real quick. I'm a very, very pro legal immigration
oh yeah,
person.
me too. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm a product of the American dream. My parents, I'm a first generation Hispanic, Mexican American. My
Yeah.
parents came here legally.
Yeah.
They did it the right way. I'm very happy they did it. And myself and my sisters were born here, and I'm a product of that, and proud of it. And so I am also as much as an advocate that I am against illegal immigration. I'm very, very much of an advocate for pro legal immigration.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And when like we know, when you have to work really hard for something, you get it, you appreciate it a lot more. So that should be motivation for people to be more pro, people that are coming here legally, vice people that are coming here illegally, and have this revolving door on committing crimes against their communities and being able to go back and do it over and over again, and no one no one can stop it. It's very
That's right.
frustrating.
Yes.
So what else would you say on our last few minutes here? What else would you like to say as far as like motivation for people to hopefully keep the border safe, and then eventually make it even safer with what your recommendations were as far as calling out the military and doing a surge on the border?
Yeah, I think the awareness would be a big one to unfortunately you're not going to get it from the mainstream media. What's going down at the border? Just dig a little bit online. You will find good reporting out there about what's happening in Mexico, and how they talked about it. Will the violence spill over? Will it back in the I remember early 2000s, the violence can spill over. It's spilled over a long time ago, and and that violence is in our communities. A lot of these crimes that you see around our country are directly related to the criminal organizations in Mexico. So the focus, I would say, the awareness, and another thing I would add is elect your local elected officials. I've been talking about this for the last couple of years. For some reason, the local elected officials, the mayors, the county commissioners, the city councils, all of a sudden started dictating to the police, our police chiefs and our sheriffs, about what they can and cannot enforce. And I think that's a dangerous route to go in. I'm a big supporter of the police. Let them do. They're the experts. Let them do their job.
Yeah.
Let them execute their job the best that they can. When you have a mayor telling the sheriff you can't arrest somebody because they're illegal alien, or you can't call ICE, that's a dangerous path. There's a case really quick out of West Virginia. It was Fairfax, Virginia, about 2 years ago, where an officer, there's a car accident. He shows up. One of the drivers happens to be illegal. He has a warrant, an ICE warrant. He does his job, checks it, checks the warrant, hooks him up, calls ICE. Well, he gets suspended by the chief of police because it's a sanctuary city, and you can't arrest the guy because he's illegal, and you can't call ICE. But if the guy had a DEA warrant, or an FBI warrant, or another police agency warrant, it would have been okay. But because it's an ICE warrant, and they hate ICE, and they want to abolish ICE, and they hate President Trump, or whatever, all these reasons, they fired the police officer. And eventually there was a good outlash of the community where the police officer was reinstated. But that's something that I would say is the local level, especially with the crimes that we've seen, and the riots, and the decision making by our local elected officials is so important. Who is in there representing you? Pay attention to that.
Definitely. So I have somebody made a statement in the chat. It says, my cousin's daughter was killed by a drunk driver, which was an illegal alien, and ran back to Mexico. They can't give them bonds. She was a beautiful, smart 17-year-old young lady. And I
That's so
know this
smart.
happens a lot. I have a friend that is from El Salvador, and she talks about how the gangs down there will come to America. They'll, deport them back, and they just make their way back up and come right back in again.
Yep.
Do you see any way to stop any of that?
Securing the border.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It
And
all comes down to that. And, it sounds so simple, right?
uh,
Believe me, it's not rocket science here. It's just the willingness to want to do it. Mexico helped a little bit in the immigration process because of President Trump put some pressure on them, and they did help. But they have completely, especially the president, has completely turned his back on the whole country when comes to the cartels. He said he'd rather give them hugs than bullets. And it is incredible. And the current president of Mexico has absolutely no will to fight these cartels. They are going rampant in that country right now.
wow, that's amazing. So it's frustrating because we had a president that was like, finally cracking down on all these different, groups that were allowing all this to come through. I think they really attacked him really hard and did their best to drive him out. We can look at the election and stuff like that and go, what really happened there? But I think the American people kind of spoke, but it got shut down. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it doesn't look good for the border.
My only hope is that they realize that the Biden administration I'm talking about here
Mhm.
can realize the dangerous path they're going to set if they open the border up wide. It won't be pretty. It won't be pretty for our country. It's not a good thing because now they're emboldened and all illegals. I'm talking about all of them. They're gonna rush the border. That we're gonna be overwhelmed down there. It's gonna be a very different atmosphere. They're kind of almost gonna feel entitled. Well, President Biden says so, so why aren't we just coming in?
Oh, yeah.
Like they're like we're supposed to just let people in here. And let's not forget the national security. What I think is border security is national security. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think I've heard that the gravy trains are already starting to form up, getting ready to come
Yeah.
across right
Oh yeah,
after the inauguration. So
that's right.
it's going to be very frustrating. Victor, absolutely phenomenal. I'd love to have you back and we talk more specifically, maybe even have some of the people that I'm involved with that are into child trafficking and human trafficking. So you could speak more deeply on that. And that's,
I would love to.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think going forward, we're going to see a lot more focus on that and people are really interested in stopping that. So that'd be great to have you on again. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, if people wanna reach out to me,
Yeah.
they could go to agentunderfirebook.com, agentunderfirebook.com. They could actually buy the book if they want to there. You could go through Amazon as well, but
Mhm.
you could send me a message. I also I'm trying to expand my speaking engagements. I could come out and speak to a group, and looking forward to maybe doing a little bit more of that in 2021.
Yeah, your speaking abilities I know are going to be in great demand as far as like, not only just for what we talked about here, but also for, that fire incident you went through. A lot of people can learn from that. And I think a lot of people are starting to tap you for that. That's outstanding. Gets good insight about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll put that link in the description box, guys. And definitely go to his site and buy his book because I can tell you, it's great to have our books listed on the big Amazon and so forth, but we only get a fraction of that. A lot of you think that everyone that writes a book gets rich. Not so much because they get most of that. They get a lion's share. But when you come and buy the book directly, we get a nice little piece of that. So that it's more direct to us. So definitely come in and buy that book. Highly recommend it. I looked at it and I was like, I didn't want to put it down. It just came unbelievably. I was like, I hope I get that book. Hope I get that book. And it came in. So, there you go. Agent Under Fire. So you want that book because it's got some good insights like we were talking about. Victor,
Thank you. Thank you
thank
so
you
much
so
for having me.
much. Lots of love out there to everyone. Thanks for joining us. And those of you that are going to watch this all over the world, take some good insight because it's happening not just here in America on our border, but like Victor was talking about, in other countries as well.